Jewish Channel's Week in Review. The Jewish violence Israeli leaders are calling terrorist attacks and a lynching. This opera, inspired by the Talmud and written by a rabbinical student. An investigative series on the ultra-Orthodox and the internet. And more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now on this episode of the Week in Review. Hello and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Israeli leaders are calling them terrorist attacks and a lynching, describing what is perhaps the most public episode of Jewish violence against Palestinians in Israel in recent memory, and the firebombing of 6 Palestinians in the West Bank. The assault of 4 Palestinian youths by a mob of dozens of Jewish Israeli teenagers in Jerusalem last week, shouting "Death to Arabs," has one of the 4 victims still hospitalized and in critical care as we go to broadcast. 5 Jewish Israeli teenagers have been arrested thus far. Police claim that hundreds were watching the assault but did nothing to stop it. The attack is distinct from many others that have been reported in recent years because of how centrally located and public it was, in the heart of Jerusalem in the area called Zion Square, a popular tourist destination. The episode has echoes of a mob attacking Arab workers and shoppers in a major Jerusalem shopping mall several months ago. The still hospitalized Palestinian youth is 17-year-old Jamal Julani of East Jerusalem. Attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank by the local Jewish settler population continued in the past week, with the firebombing of a Palestinian taxi near Bethlehem that injured 6 Palestinians, including a pair of 4-year-old twins. The attacks were condemned by Israeli Vice Prime Minister Moshe Ya'alon in a statement, calling them, quote, terrorist attacks. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it, quote, a very serious attack. And Israeli leaders aren't the only ones describing such attacks as terrorism. The attacks come in the same week that the United States has for the first time included Jewish settler violence against Palestinians in its report on global terrorism. The State Department's new Country Reports on Terrorism 2011 states, quote, attacks by extremist Israeli settlers against Palestinian residents' property and places of worship in the West Bank continued. Late-breaking news as we went to broadcast had another attack, an arson attempt against a Palestinian home by West Bank settlers. A different strain of extremism that's been prominent in recent months has been that of the Ultra-Orthodox, using violence and other means to try to keep outside influences from affecting their lives. And now that's extending to archaeological sites. Bad-Issa was named a National Heritage Site by the Israeli government in 2011 and has been excavated and made ready for public viewing by state agencies. It's believed to be an agricultural village from the Second Temple period. But the ancient village is now right in the middle of the ultra-Orthodox enclave of Modi'in Elite, and the ultra-Orthodox mayor wants the site to be open only to ultra-Orthodox visitors. The mayor told Israeli newspaper Haaretz that the site, quote, will operate according to the doctrines of our forefathers, according to the Jewish historical sources presented by the Bible, the Gemara, and ancient Jewish sages only. The site will be open only to the ultra-Orthodox, which will keep it a proper place for them to visit and connect to their Jewish roots without the distortions and disruptions of other places where there is fear of hearing false opinions. In response, the mayor of the neighboring town of Modi'in said he'll close the city's Central Park to visitors from the ultra-Orthodox enclave if such a policy is implemented at the archaeological site. And here in the United States, ultra-Orthodox enclavism showed itself in a racist editorial in the popular Yiddish newspaper Der Yid, invoking the N-word. As the website Failed Messiah noted, the editorial criticized the idea of watching the Olympics to see the activities of people who are, well, we won't say them out loud in this broadcast, but you can see them translated here. Moving on to a story of reading Jewish texts in new ways, an opera based on passages of the Talmud created by a rabbinical student, Christianine reports.
A recently performed Jewish-themed opera explored the life of a yeshiva student devoted to his religious studies by day, but who can't stop dreaming of his sister at night. If you think that topic sounds incestuous, then consider that the source material is the Talmud. Yes, Chalom, a dream opera, draws its inspiration from a statement in the 9th chapter of the Babylonian Talmud, which states in part that, quote, one who wraps tefillin in a dream should expect greatness. One who has sex with his sister in a dream should expect wisdom. That provocative passage was explored in operatic form on stage last week at the New School of Drama in Greenwich Village during the New York International Fringe Festival. The opera was conceived by composer Bronwyn Mullen, who is a current rabbinical student at the Jewish Theological Seminary, but who was inspired to write the opera back in 2009 as a student at Manhattan's Drisha Institute, where she spent a year studying the 9th chapter of the Talmud, focusing on dreams.
What the Arts Fellowship of Drisha does, which is just an incredible thing, is that they charge artists to make works in their own medium in response to Jewish text. And what that really basically empowers you to do is you become a commentator. You become not unlike Rashi or Ramban or Maimonides or any of these folks. And we all have our own avenues. So there are photographers, there are filmmakers, and for me, I'm a musician.
Mullen decided to write the opera to commentate on a series of quotes in the 9th chapter, which juxtaposed the religious with the sexual. 4 quotes for each.
A man dreams he's hearing a eulogy is the first one, and then it's explained. A man dreams that he's reciting Shema, and it's explained. A man dreams he's rapping tefillin, and it's explained. And a man dreams that he's reciting tefillah, or the Amidah, right? Immediately following that says, a man dreams he's having sex with his mother. A man dreams he's having sex with a betrothed woman. A man dreams he's having sex with his sister. And a man dreams he's having sex with a married woman. Right next to each other.
Mullen said this juxtaposed relationship was ripe for closer examination.
It was very, very clear instantly that these 8 dreams were meant to be associated together because they had very obviously common literary patterns. I mean, the actual wording, the actual language, the way that a quote would be used. So we have to ask, what is the purpose of connecting these religious dreams and these sexual dreams?
Mullen was highly aware of how controversial it would be to explore this juxtaposition through performance.
It felt very radical and it felt very irreverent. I was like, yeah, I'm going to point out to you, you rabbis, you know what I mean, you Orthodox Jews, I'm going to show you that your text, your Talmud, connects the religious and the sexual one. Is going to be dirty and nasty and there's nothing you can do about it because I'm using all your words. And that was part of it, is that to create this piece where not a single word is altered.
To hear more from Bronwyn Mullen and her new opera exploring the Talmud's view on the meaning of dreams, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. In political news this week, billionaire and Republican megadonor Sheldon Adelson has pledged to donate $100 million to defeat President Barack Obama in his bid for re-election this year. But separate and apart from that is a pledge of $500,000 to just one congressional campaign, that of Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, who is running as a Republican for an open seat in New Jersey against sitting Congressman Democrat Bill Pascrell. But some Republicans already in Congress are facing a bit of heat this week for their activities on a government-sponsored trip to Israel last year. 5 members of Congress took a late-night swim in the Sea of Galilee, and Representative Kevin Yoder of Kansas, who didn't have a bathing suit with him at the time, decided to take the dip in his birthday suit. Apparently, the incident led Majority Leader Eric Cantor, who was also on the trip, to scold them the next morning. And on the topic of mixing politics and Judaism, New York One News political correspondent Josh Robin sat down with me to discuss a recent 5-part investigative series he aired about ultra-Orthodox use of the internet. Here are the highlights of that interview. So what did you find most surprising in your reporting?
I guess most surprising is that for all of the prohibitions that a number of rabbis place on their congregants, they're flouted. There are these vast prohibitions that emerge from time to time, and essentially people listen and they give it some thought, and then they bust out their smartphone, which has the internet on it. But I think that was also surprising and was really the focus of my story, was the fact that this is a struggle. People are really struggling with how to navigate this new technological world that we find ourselves in. And my hope, and I think that it succeeded, is that it triggered a conversation not just among Orthodox Jews, not just among Jews, but among everyone. I think everyone is really struggling with how this is influencing our lives and what the positives are and what the negatives are.
So on the first part of your answer, I mean, it's funny because your series keys off on the anti-internet rally that was held at Citi Field in May. And we saw many tens of thousands of people gather. And of course, I mean, the video for your story came off the internet. The video for our story came off the internet, of people there shooting video and putting it on the internet. Quite obviously, a great number of people at that rally engage in regular internet use.
Yeah, and it was actually streamed, so I'm not entirely sure whether it was officially streamed or unofficially streamed, but the same happened with the Siyum Hashas, right. A couple of weeks ago, which is that someone took out a cell phone and actually filmed it and streamed it, and it got many, many followers. I think people have took away from the Asifa what they wanted to take away from it, which is that you should try to limit your use of the internet, you should try to use it for holy purposes, but I think that there's going to be a number of disagreements between the speakers there, who tended to be more of the older sort, and those who are in the audience, especially the younger people, about the fact that you could be pious and use the internet at the same time.
One of the topics that repeatedly came up in your series was the issue of ultra-Orthodox abuse and criminality, and how that's dealt with on the internet. And you spoke with one of our favorite people here, Shmari Rosenberg of Failed Messiah, and also the blogger behind oddconenough.com. Mm-hmm. And you found that that they face a lot of threats and a lot of difficulty in reporting on ultra-Orthodox scandal.
Right. Something that you and I know about well is journalism, and journalism has been made in some senses easier by the internet, and it's also allowed people to expose abuses within whatever community they're in. In the Jewish community, there is this blogger, let's start with Oddcon Enough, who is a simple individual who has had a terrible life story, and the fact that she was abused repeatedly throughout her life, and became very sensitive to the fact that there were abuses still going on within her frum community, and she wanted to do something about it. She started posting reports of people who were predators within the community, and she also talked about herself, and she also allowed people to talk about their own instances of being abused. And this has been limited for people who have been who are religious, are Jewish, and who have been abused.
You can find the full interview with Josh Robin in the weekly news category in the Jewish Channel's on-demand menu. And you can view his series for New York One on the internet at ny1.com/tangledweb. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.